Okay, I would like to talk about one more class. So then you can start your exercises, or maybe you can continue tomorrow as well. So, a small example, of course, but I would have to give a lot of introduction and a lot of other strings also about the particular class, what I'm going to talk now. It is called service. So far in Android, we have been writing a class which is inherited from a class called activity. Now we are going to see an additional one. This, of course, this is also a class which is going to be inherited from a class called service. The difference between the activity and service, uh, one activity has a UI, service does not have any UI. So there is no part of working anything with XML, nothing. We don't need to do that. Similarity, maybe both are a separate process, as I already told you. So every, UI or service, broadcast receiver, everything, as far as Android is all separate processes. It means it kind of a threaded environment where it independently works. Um of course, same like intent class, like I start activity. So start activity give a instance of an intent which started a new activity. In this case, I'm going to use the same intent, but this time is going to be start service. A service is a essentially considered as a background process. That's the reason there is no UI. It has a pretty bigger life cycle than the activity. We know the activity life cycle from start to end, like on create to on destroy. So various cycle it undergoes. But the total span of particular activity life is slightly limited and of course disturbed by various factors. Essentially, the user interaction itself, or user can easily close the application, so the activity lifecycle terminates there itself. So totally, if I can conclude, the activity lifecycle is slightly short-lived. It lives only for a corresponding period where the user actually see the UI. When the user decided to either pause or close the application, activity lifecycle is reaching to a end state. For example, I have an application. So the last one we created, this one. Hitting home, I know the application is just got paused or stopped. It was not destroyed. So that I know that. It means the activity has not been terminated. But how long it can run behind the screen? That's a question. So right now I did not hit back. I simply hit home button. So in my understanding, the activity is still working. Still objects are live. I can again bring it back, and if I hit back, I am assuming the activity is destroyed now. So it's purely based on the user interaction one. And of course, an activity is paused for a longer time. So I will not the menu. Uh, Assume a user, instead of clicking back or close, he just hit the home button. So it is right now paused or stopped. But typically, it won't run a longer time. Maybe it may run throughout the day if a user does not notice. The next day, uh, the Dalvik virtual machine garbage collection process will start. So unwanted memory, some memory which is occupying quite longer time, which is not used, and that will make sure your activity is terminated at one point of time. So even though if you press the home button, there is no guarantee the particular activity resides in the memory for a longer time. Maybe few hours it may stay, and after one point of time it will be closed by program or Dalvik virtual machine itself. So the duration of an activity lifecycle, if I consider, it primarily lives when the UI is visible and when it is receiving the user interaction or user touch event, till the time the activity lives. Later point of time the activity does not live. But you may have a specific requirement for your application where you want to listen the particular user activity. I mean, user activity mean where the what kind of a phone he is having, which location he is right now residing, or what are all the day-to-day activity he is doing. Something you want to listen without notifying the user in the background, and in that case, your application should run throughout the lifetime of the phone. It is not something like activity once immediately get closed. It should be in a position to run for a longer time, even after your application is closed. So if you have that requirement, and that's where this class called service helps you. So I'm going to write a small example. I'm going to create an activity. I'm also going to create service. I'm going to see how long these guys runs by writing a small timer inside. Putting a timer, so let me see how long an activity runs and how long a service runs. So then I probably may conclude what is the efficient way. So the project name I'm going to give service. I prefer linear layout for shorter examples. And also a service, it's a process, and a service should be started by an activity ideally. A service, for example, an activity, the very first activity started by manifest we note, because the manifest we declare, launcher and whatever settings we provide, it tells we are telling it it is going to be a main activity. So the system starts the very first activity, and then you move on to a respective new activity and activate, deactivate wherever required. Whereas the service, of course, it cannot be auto started at this point, and from the example what I'm going to talk. So it should have a dependability over one particular activity in order to start or stop it. So I'm going to keep two buttons. So one button will start it, another button will stop it. So need to modify before. Let me add some values. So start and stop, two buttons I have. So each button is going to do a specific task. So whereas the clicking this button is going to start a service, whereas this button is going to terminate a service, because I have to do this control because a service is not automatically started by a manifest. In this case, an activity should take in charge of starting and stopping an activity. So pretty useful process. We need to initialize our buttons. we know there is a various ways to add this. So starting and stopping, even click listeners I have added for on click listener for a button. If you want to implement it here also, you can do it. So this is all we already know. Before that, I will have my application running and checking the emulator. So it looks fine. The caps is due to the uppercase is due to the theme what we have added, which converts your button text into uppercase. So I was wondering it was slightly different than the behavior or expected behavior. So I'm going to create a new class. So my service name. In this case, it is going to be extends service. Make sure you pick the right import Android app service. So it is asking me to implement some method, so it seems to be it is containing some of abstract method which needs an implementation. Something called binder, we will see that what. Same like activity lifecycle, service also has its own lifecycle. We know that activity lifecycle how it works. On create, on resume, and when the application goes into when application for someone clicks on home button, it goes to pause and stop there itself. If it is back button pressed, so it comes from pause, stop and destroy. When you again open it, if it is coming from a background, it will call the on resume, otherwise it will call from on create. Some sort of thing we saw in activity lifecycle. Service also have a similar lifecycle, but not much. For our comfortability, what I'm going to do, I'm going to introduce only two lifecycle. On create, remember there is no argument here. On destroy. This is the two I want to keep it as of now. So only two life cycle, or two service life cycle. One is on create, another one is on destroy to start with. It means on create whenever the service first time started. On destroy when the service get terminated. So only two. I would prefer some constants. I do not have a file class anything. So log debug statement service started. I am writing only two, so I can check in a log. So if a service is active, I will see this particular log printed in the log. In the logcat, and if the service is terminated, this particular message will be printed. Same like activity, a service require a entry in manifest. This time it is going to be service the service, the name should be defined here, otherwise the particular service may not be active, or any attempt to initialize the service will fail. The usual process, technique, give the job to intent. The same way, but this is where we are going to change. It is going to be start service. Previously we were calling start activity because this particular destination is a service now. This is going to be stop service. So clicking a button will make sure a service class is initialized and is started. Why I'm saying started mean, I told already it is a process. A process means something on execution, something on running. So a particular process would be initialized and would be started, and it has to be manually rested, because I told you a service is a longer life cycle. Even though your application get closed, a service doesn't get terminated. It will go to background mode. It will keep. Of course, the thing is itself run in the background, so anything happen to UI, it doesn't affect. So the service will be always alive unless you manually force it to stop. So that's the reason I need to have a stop button also in order to put it into it. In order to terminate it. So I'm going to depend on the DDMS. What's the filter name? I don't remember. So where is the filter? Don't see any entries. Let me run one more time. I'm sure my log is not updating. Let me try to run on my device if possible. Try. This one. me check some other log statement. It's called, okay, service started message came. I don't know what kind of bug it is, but so when I click start, the service started message came. So when I hit stop, the service destroyed message will come. So it means an intent, I mean your intent is being passed to an Android system, so it respect, because the a manifest already has an entry called service. So a particular class is initialized and it is put into an active mode. A service can be started and destroyed according to, I mean, various instances. For example, it has a dependency over your particular activity, because in a previous condition a main activity was launched by a manifest, whereas the service is not launched in that case, because service is primarily considered as a background process, so it need a dependency over a activity in order to trigger based on the user interaction. In this case I kept two buttons, so a button start is clicked, the service is started, and when it is ended, of course when you click stop, it is terminate. Let me repeat one more time. The example shopping. No, it is not working. Let me try my phone. I don't know, for some reason the log is not printing, because the next exercise I have a huge dependency over log. I need to print a timer. I cannot depend on Toast, because Toast itself has a delay, and of course it will run in a process, so that I don't want to mess it up. So I need a log to be printed properly. So I'm connecting a physical device. Hopefully I will be getting an output directly. So on create called. When I hit, I click the button start, and then I hit the button stop. Start, stop, I can hit n number of times, so accordingly it will be started, stopped. Few things you need to notice. Right now it is destroyed, so once I click start, the service is started. Any attempt to click the start again and again won't restart or do anything with the service. A service is once started and cannot be restarted again. A started service, once it's initialized, any attempt to call the same service again to start won't do any effect. That's the reason once I click started, so I keep clicking the start button, you don't see any log printed here. Mean the service is already started. This kind of kind of a strategy is called thread safe. It is thread safe, mean a thread is initialized any attempt to invoke it again and again won't disturb the running thread. So it is service is a thread safe environment. Now I hit stop just once, so it will be destroyed. So of course that particular service is done. The same thing, stop n number of time, if I press also it won't disturb. On force close it won't do anything because the service is already stopped. Once it's stopped, it's more than enough to call it again. So start, stop, based on the click we have added. But this is slightly tedious. I would like to put more interactive. I open the activity. I want to keep a timer. There is a class timer. Timer I can schedule at a fixed rate. Mean I'm going to run a block again and again. It's also a threaded one. So I'm going to increment by every 1 second, so the same block will be called. So schedule at fixed rate. See, this is nothing to do with Android. It is a Java specific. So schedules at fixed rate. It need a class called timer task. So I'm going to initialize that. When I want to start in the moment the code start running within 1 second, 1000 millisecond is 1 second. So the moment the timer is called, after 1 second this block will be executed and it will continue for every 1 second. So this is to start time, this is the occurrence. Every 1 second this internal run block will be called again and again. So this is start, this is the difference between each cycle, occurrences. So timer itself a threaded one, so I need to handle it safely to not keep a leaked one. So I made it as a global. I'm going to keep a destroy method. Cancel the timer when your activity is terminated. It means it will stop there itself. When activity is no more, it will stop. If you notice, the log is keep printing. If you notice the timing, if you see every 1 second it is repeating. But its duration is only when I have my application open. The moment I hit my application back, the timer stopped there itself. So how long the activity runs, that long the timer will run. So once I hit back, the timer just stopped there itself. Again, if I open it, what's the name I gave? Service example. So this block will be again activated. So a timer is running, it means my activity is live. If I hit home also, this particular blocks will be called because my activity is running behind the screen, even though it is not visible. But this particular duration is applicable only when the activity is living in the process. So activity is now, I clear it. So when I hit back, the timer stop there itself. So as long as the view is visible, as long as the particular view is in the background, the timer lives. So this is the duration of your activity lifecycle. After that, any object living inside the activity disappears. I'm going to write the same in service. Same block. Since it is starting in onCreate, there also I kept in onCreate. Same block, same thing, but only difference is this time this code is defined in onCreate of a service, and also I slightly modified the log message timer called from service. Already destroy is there, so I don't need to worry about it. And also here also I'll write one more tag. So cancel. Timer terminated. Here also I write in service. Let us see what kind of response we are going to get. So timer called and from activity which is printing, so which I know that because the activity initialized now. Now I'm going to hit the start button. Batch shred. If you notice, both the timers are printing. But one timer is actually printing a log from a service class, another one is from activity class. So it's pretty obvious both the processors are running in this case. Now I'm going to terminate the activity by hitting back button. If you notice, the timer terminated in activity came, but whereas the service still printing. The application is closed now. The application is no more in the foreground. I hit back, but still the service is running. It means something is running behind the screen even after your application is closed. So this service can run any longer time where your operating system permits. Maybe as long as your battery drains completely or when you switch off your phone. Till the time this particular block will be running throughout. It can listen your location in a stealth mode. Of course, it something you can run behind the screen where even after your application is closed in service class. So the timer has no limitation. It will be running throughout. Only you have to manually decided to stop it. Of course, that also joined now because activity now foreground. Now I'm going to stop the service. If you notice, the timer terminated in service, so now the service stuff is terminated since I forced it to stop. So the activity prints. Of course, if I hit back, both will be terminated. Nothing is there now. So all shut off. So a service is a very straightforward one. It can run in background and it has a pretty longer life cycle than anything in Android system. So activity, even though it has various life cycle, but its entire duration of the life is slightly limited as long as the UI is visible. Whereas service, it doesn't need any kind of either UI is open or closed. Once it is initialized, it becomes permanent and keeps running. So that's the whole difference of the service and the activity. Only thing, the service does not have anything UI attached. So only a calculation or anything specific to behind the screen. For example, I want to call the internet from I mean remote location, you want to fetch the data, you can do it in background. If you want to trace the user location, you can do it in background. So what is best for a background, you have to decide and keep the code there, and the rest you can keep it in activity. In my understanding, activity is going to hold only the UI element which is going to be displayed. The rest all can be moved to service, which is going to be a longer running specific one. So hereafter we are going to see both the classes, and we are going to offload something which so far we have written in activity, we are going to move them into service. And since it is both are different processor, we need to see how I can communicate between these two processes, and things are slightly going to be hardware specific, and what is process, what is inter-process communication, how to achieve it, those things are going to be followed. So this is what we are going to see in the next subsequent sessions. It's a pretty simple example though, but gives us a various scope of moving our code into service. Anything a longer running process, it is better to keep it in service. Only UI, what you want to display, comes in activity. For example, you want to keep for a New Year timer, something. For example, the clock's going down every second until the New Year time up comes. This is the app you want to create, a countdown clock or something like that. The timer can be inside the service. Only the UI which is displayed, whenever the user opens the countdown will be there, will be the latest one. Whereas the countdown will be running throughout behind the screen in your phone. The moment the new year comes, you can trigger some alerts getting that happy new year or whatever it is, because it can run even years as long as your phone is active. Even though practically yes, it can run throughout the process, throughout the lifetime, but there may be chances uh, your service may also be terminated in exceptional cases. That we will see. But ideally, a service runs throughout the time your operating system allows it. I mean, maybe until the user uninstall your phone or restart your phone, like that it will run. So service is going to be a simplistic one in one way because there is no UI. It may be a slightly complex because it is going to talk something about the process and process IDs, inter-process communication. And of course, we are into a second segment of our Android program. Now we are seeing service. The service is this much. That's it, the introduction about the service. And it doesn't have much to talk about. There is no UI, that's why most of the part is not there. I don't need to discuss that thing. Only the program logic, what I'm going to write here, is going to make a difference. Similarly, I only have one topic left, which is called broadcast receiver. That I'm going to talk about it tomorrow itself in order to sandwich something in between a service and activity. The communication is going to happen between these two guys through the broadcast receiver. The name itself, broadcasting receiving, is very apparent that the broadcast receiver will announce something, someone is going to be receiving something. So the service or activity going to send or receive something using the broadcast receiver, the inter-process communication. So we are going to see them in the subsequent exercises. So that's it as far as the service class. Hopefully, I'll put the source code also, but tomorrow what you need to do is complete anything pending. Uh, some exercise I explained that how you can use a custom adapter and custom data type, you complete them. And if anything UI generation, if you have any question, you make sure you get it clarified, and we'll freshly move on to another segment of our Android learning program. Okay.